I think at this point, the vast majority of us have a video game that was with us when we were younger that we hold on to very dearly. As someone that's been online since I was pretty young, I have a lot of these games, and some of them are more embarrassing than others. If you grew up around the same time I did, by which I mean you were on the internet from the same age I was around the same time, you probably had a phase where you're into Five Nights at Freddy's or RPG Maker horror games like Ip or Mad Father. And if you were a weeb like me, you probably also had a bit of a visual novel dating sim moment. Dating sims are definitely not taken very seriously, generally speaking, but I still feel like now it is treated way more seriously than it was back when I was a 13-year-old weeaboo. And don't get me wrong, I understand why they don't appeal to everyone. In fact, I was really embarrassed to admit that I liked dating sims and visual novels in general for the longest time because of stuff like this. I feel like one of the main reasons why this shift happened is because of dating sims not really taking themselves as seriously anymore. For example, games like Dream Daddy or that one KFC dating sim that exists for some reason. Heck, does anyone remember the Adam Sandler dating sim that was going around on Tumblr back in the day? I remember the Adam Sandler dating sim. I played that. And even though these games definitely started as jokes, I feel like I definitely wouldn't be wrong in saying that it was definitely a factor in why games like Doki Doki Literature Club were able to draw so much traction. In fact, I feel like a lot of these self-aware dating sims are kind of their own genre at this point, both the jokey ones and the ones that take a more serious route. But there is one of these jokey visual novel dating sim games that is what you may call my original fandom. In fact, I would actually argue that it has had a bigger influence on the visual novel genre than a lot of people give it credit for. And that's kind of a shame because it's an amazing game. So, what is this amazing visual novel that I'm mentioning? Well, you see. Guys, please don't leave, this isn't a joke video, please just listen, hear me out, hear me out. So if you clicked on this video completely unknowingly, you may be thinking, Coco, those are pigeons. And yes, you would be correct. This is Hatoful Boyfriend. It is a bird dating simulator. If you were around on YouTube back in the year it came out, you may remember a few YouTubers playing this game. Of course, most of them only did 1 or 2 videos and didn't play further than that, so yeah. So, for the uninitiated, what is Hatoful Boyfriend? Okay, so the basic plot of Hatoful Boyfriend is this. You are the only human at an all-birds, all-boys school. At this school, you meet a lot of very interesting birds with a lot of interesting hijinks happening and all that good stuff. This is definitely a very basic description, and don't get me wrong, I'm going to talk more about the game and what it's about later on, but for all intents and purposes, that is all you need to know at this point in time. In fact, before I talk any further about this game, I would like to talk about the creator first and why I think birds specifically were chosen to be the romance options in this game. When you open the game, you see that the developers are listed as Pigeonation Inc. This is actually just one person, which is Hatomoa. Hatomoa is, according to the Hatoful Boyfriend wiki, a manga artist, script writer, game developer, pigeon king, and occasionally translator from Osaka. And at least from what I can find online, she seems to be the only person who worked on this game, which is very impressive. In fact, this is because this game was originally just supposed to be an April Fool's project that later got developed into a full game because of how fucking popular the April Fool's project was. If you couldn't gather from what I said before, Hatomoa is very passionate about birds. In fact, if the information I found is correct, the reason why photographs of birds are used instead of actual character sprites, despite the fact that the birds have human designs, the birds have human designs by the way, is actually just because Hatomoa really likes birds and happened to have a lot of photos of birds just lying around. In fact, this would let Hatomoa just focus on making the writing for the game good, rather than faffing around with making the perfect sprites and all of that stuff. In fact, if the stuff in this game isn't made by Hatomoa, then It's probably either a fan submission or something that is just completely royalty free that Hatomoa found on the internet. And while some people might find this incredibly lazy, I actually think this adds to the charm of the game a lot more. The royalty-free stuff used in the game doesn't feel like royalty-free stuff. It feels like a part of the game. The selection of music and images is honestly kind of perfect. Heck, even though I know in my heart that most of the music in the game is made by Kevin MacLeod, I don't hear it and hear Kevin MacLeod. I just hear the Hatoful Boyfriend soundtrack. And trust me, every single time I hear some of these songs when I'm looking for music for YouTube videos, yeah, it does something to my brain, let's put it that way. The point is, these things do not take away from the experience. In fact, I would say that it adds to it a lot. This is a game that is carried by the love put into it and the amazing story. And I guess I better get into explaining that story now. So, before we discuss the actual plot of Hatoful Boyfriend, we should probably discuss how the story is split up. Hatoful Boyfriend is split into two parts. The first part is the normal life part. This is just the part where you go around dating pigeons and having a good time. The second part, however, is more of an interesting case, and it's the reason why I would dare to compare this game to something like Doki Doki Literature Club, so we'll go into it after I've discussed the first part. So, let's get into talking about the first part of the story. You, the player character, are the only human in a school full of birds. This school is known as St. Pigeonations, and it is a school for gifted birds from all different places. And to those of you in the audience who are wondering, what is the point of a human being at a school for birds? Well, that is a spoiler, so I am going to be careful with what I say, but let's say there is some plot significance to it. You attend this school with your childhood friend Ryota Kawara, who is a lovely pigeon who has never done anything wrong ever, and I would die for him. And I want to take a moment to touch on the characters before I talk any more about the story, because I feel like it kind of shows what kind of game this is. Most of the characters in this game are very clearly supposed to be based on tropes that appear a lot in dating sim games. This will definitely be pretty obvious to you if you've ever played another dating sim before, but all things considered, it doesn't really make that much of an impact on your experience if you haven't. But there is one thing that you should consider when it comes to characters in this game. This game is a deconstruction of most dating sims, and that does mean that these tropes are used to build on these characters. And unfortunately, I am endeavoring to keep this video as spoiler-free as possible, which means I won't be delving too much into the characters. However, I may drop some small things here and there, so I guess go play the game if you have an issue with that, I don't know. So, to briefly cover all of the characters in this game, I am going to just give you a very short summary of what most of them are like. Ryota is your usual childhood friend type trope. He's very friendly, but also can be a little bit mischievous. He's a sickly bird that enjoys cross-dressing, which you can see in this official body pillow of Ryota that you can actually buy. Okay, never mind, I looked that up right after recording this, you can't buy it anymore, I'm sorry. Alternatively, there is also your teacher, Nanaki Kazuaki. He's a bit of a funky guy, he likes to sleep a lot, but generally speaking, he's a nice teacher who seems to be, hiding some things. But despite that, he's still pretty kind and caring, and generally pretty good. Sakuya Blabel Shirogane is an aristocrat, and he will make sure you know that. He's obviously incredibly sheltered, and sometimes says some really fucking weird shit. And despite the fact that he's a massive gaping asshole, he was my favorite when I was 13, so I have a bit of a soft spot for him. And while we're on the topic of Sakuya, let's talk about his half-brother Yuya. Yuya Sakazaki is a third year and also a notorious ladies' man. He uses occasional French because unfortunately him and Sakuya are part French, but it becomes very obvious into the game that all of his flirting is just a front for him being suspicious as fuck. And speaking of suspicious as fuck, let's talk about the library bird, aka the main source of suffering in the game. This is Nageki Fujishiro. He's a first year and will be the reason you cry if you cry at this game at all. He's shy, quiet, and sits in the library all day, and I can't elaborate any further without dropping intense spoilers. So, Oko-san exists for the YouTubers who played this game and didn't want to play any routes beyond the funny one. Okay, yeah, I really can't talk about Oko-san that much. He is just a funny character that exists to be funny. He likes pudding. He's in the track team. Yeah, he is the comedy route. There are also a few secret characters that you can find in this game. For example, Uncle Higure, who is a Chinibyo boy who becomes weirdly plot relevant after a point. There is also a Sammy, who is a takoyaki seller who happens to be a biker. And while you aren't going to get this in the PC version of the game, and the PlayStation version is, I believe, no longer on sale, there is also a secret character in the PlayStation version called Tori, who is related to another character. And speaking of another character, those who are familiar with this game may be noticing that I left someone out of my initial character recap, and that's because I want to focus on him in particular.
Hey, don't fucking look at me like that. That's a weird looking fucking cat.
Oh, sweet man-made horrors beyond my comprehension. Oh boy, I was looking forward to talking about Shu. Iwamine Shu is the school doctor. He is also a walking red flag and the cause of most of the plot in this game. Shu is very suspicious, by which I mean he is very open about murdering people and should not be working in a school. He is also most likely the bird you have seen weird sexy fan art of the most from this game, if you have seen any at all. Shu is the reason why this game gets pretty fucking dark at points, and I'm gonna be honest, he does everything wrong, okay? He is, to this day, when I hear Dance of the Sugar Plum Fairy, I shit myself, and it is because of this fucking partridge. And Shu's is the only route that I genuinely do not care about spoiling, because the fucking result is just obvious from the start. He has murder on the brain. He is a murder fiend. In fact, to quote my strongly worded Steam review, "Do not try and fuck the doctor bird. Worst mistake I ever made. 10 out of 10 would do it again." So yes, as you can imagine, I am a big fan of Shu. He is probably my favorite character in the game, and Shu is definitely the first hint that you may get that something is not quite right in this school, and that things are going a little bit weirdly. And this is why, in my opinion, the game is split into parts like this. You should be playing all of the endings before you move on to the final ending. And why do I say this is the case? Most of the endings in this game provide you with crucial lore that helps you piece together some of the mysteries in the universe. While some of the routes in the game are definitely geared more towards being funny and just giving you a good time, you will notice throughout most of the endings that there is little bits of lore laced between the pages. For example, some endings will bring up political factions that you before had no idea about. And as you complete endings in the game, you also unlock notes that help you piece together little bits of the lore that aren't explained in the game. There are aspects of some characters that seem to be played for jokes at the start, but later on you start to realize that they have a little bit more significance to the lore of the universe than you thought they did before. And yes, the game does want you to get all of these endings, because if you do get all these endings, you get an epilogue, which allows you to see what happens after the final ending. And honestly, this is something that I could completely see turning someone off the game, because this does mean that you have to replay the games quite a few times to get the correct ending. However, the way the game forces you to repeat certain sections is actually very smart because you start to pick up on things in every single playthrough that before you may not have noticed the significance of. Whether it's a brief interaction with a certain character or something that a little bit of tension is drawn to only for your attention to be pulled away. The writing in this game is incredibly smart in that everything has a purpose for being a part of the game. In fact, I would argue the writing in this game is actually incredibly strong considering it started as a joke game. In fact, one thing I do want to point out is how the protagonist in this game is handled and why I love it. Hiyoko, which is the official name of the protagonist in this game, is very much her own character even though you name her and you control her. It makes sense that the protagonist was chosen for this academy because she's just a very interesting person in general. She's a hunter-gatherer who is very loud and very out there and extremely funny for some reason. And I really appreciate this because some dating sims do have a habit of trying to make the main characters a little bit too self-inserty, and Hiyoko never feels like that. And while this doesn't just go for Hiyoko's humor but the game as a whole, it never feels too much. The game actually does a very good job of balancing the funniness of the bird dating sim thing with genuine serious moments that allow for you to feel like there is an actual relationship building with the birds. Considering this is a visual novel about birds first and foremost, it is very interesting how human the writing feels when it comes to the relationships. If there weren't a lot of callbacks to the fact that the characters were birds, you would easily be able to just ignore the fact, and honestly, I appreciate that they don't let you. See, Hatoful Boyfriend might be a dating sim, but the point isn't the dating. It's building relationships and finding out about the lore through these relationships. I think what's so smart about the idea of doing it as a dating sim is obviously you are going to try and get all the endings, but in this game, you need to get all the endings to find out what's really going on behind the scenes. In fact, there are multiple endings where the love interest just flat out reject you and just do something else. This is what I mean when I say it's a deconstruction of the dating sim genre. It forces you to look at the relationships that you're building and ask, what is the point? And trust me, the endings in this game are incredibly varied. There are some endings in this game that are very obviously supposed to make you feel a lot of emotion. There are endings of this game that are very obviously geared towards comedy. And there are endings of this game that are left with unfulfilling endings. Not everything in this game is left with a clean bow, and things are messy. Things go wrong. In fact, I'd argue most of the endings don't have a nice ending. And I really do think this was intentional. I think the point was to show that this was more about telling a story than creating a nice little bird dating sim. I'm gonna be honest, I do really think it's a shame that a lot of the YouTubers that played this game only played Oko-san's route or just played until they got the bad ending, because they missed out on so much interesting information. I think it's really sad that a lot of people just played this game to do one ending and then never delved any further into it without realizing that there's a genuinely amazing story buried beneath the surface. I know there are other visual novels that get this kind of attention, but it's kind of a shame that Hatoful Boyfriend was lumped in with the regular joke visual novels, rather than being given a legitimate chance, even though that was the main reason why this game was being recommended to a lot of these YouTubers. I'm not going to elaborate any further on the roots from the first part of the game, and this is because I think most people would enjoy just playing it themselves and seeing the reveals themselves, but if people would really like to hear me analyze these roots, I am fully willing to make a second video where I go into the details and talk about all the nitty-gritty stuff about the plot. But for now, I guess we better move on to talking about the second part and what really makes this game so interesting. So, I am going to have to lightly spoil this route, because I think this will be the thing that makes people want to play this game a little bit more. So, why do I divide the story into two parts? That is because the first part of Hatoful Boyfriend and the second part are essentially two completely different visual novels. The first part of Hatoful Boyfriend is a dating sim, and it is about building relationships with the birds and all of that fun stuff. And the second part of Hatoful Boyfriend, also known as Bad Boys Love, is a murder mystery. And to explain why this is the case, I want to talk about the title of the game very quickly. Using the word Hatoful was a very, very intentional choice on the part of the translators and on the part of the creators of this game. This is because the word Hatoful has two different meanings. The first meaning of Hatoful is heartful. This obviously refers to the first part of the game, as it's about building bonds and relationships. But the second meaning of Hatoful is hurtful. And this is something that I didn't pick up on until reading through the Bad Boys Love route, where it's directly referenced. After you get to a certain part of the game, when you start a new playthrough, you will be prompted with a choice: to live a normal life or to fulfill the promise. If you choose to live a normal life, then you will go down the heartful route again. You will get to live a normal school life and build normal bonds. But choosing to fulfill the promise from long ago will take you down the Bad Boys Love route. And to be blunt, for the first part of the Bad Boys Love route, everything is pretty much the same as it was before. There aren't many changes to the normal flow of school life, and you can pretty much just talk to your classmates as you did before in the first route. But around a certain point, things start to diverge majorly. After your character takes a trip to the infirmary, the perspective mysteriously switches to Ryota. The player character, Hyoko, is found murdered, split into several different body parts, with the head being delivered directly to Ryota's classroom, where he discovers it. The school is put into lockdown, and then it becomes a race to figure out what is going on and who killed Hyoko. Now, generally speaking, I wouldn't actually usually want to spoil this twist. However, I think it's important to do so because I don't think a lot of people are actually aware of what the Bad Boys Love route actually entails before they decide to do it. I won't be going into further detail on the Bad Boys Love route. If you want to know more details, then please go and play the game yourself. However, the Bad Boys Love route basically wraps up all of the plot points that were brought up in the routes before this. This is why, rather than saying that the game is just all of these endings together, I decided to say that it was split into the first part and the second part, because I feel like it is actually necessary for people to play all of the endings before giving Bad Boys Love a try. But what I will tell you is that Bad Boys Love is an emotional roller coaster. You will be hurt. But hey, if you're curious, I guess you should just play the game, right? I'm gonna be honest, I made this video because I want people to play my brain rot game, because I feel sad and lonely. Look, I love this game. This game brought me through so many difficult times when I was younger, and I do understand that makes me incredibly biased. However, I genuinely think this game has potential to have an amazing big fanbase. The Hatoful Boyfriend fanbase used to be small, but fairly active, and nowadays it unfortunately isn't really a thing anymore. Heck, a few versions of the game have actually been delisted from purchase, which is honestly really sad when you think about it. I'm gonna be honest, I genuinely think you should give this game a try, even if you don't think it's gonna be your cup of tea. The game itself is only like £7, and honestly, it is so worth the money. If you enjoy silly goofy visual novels like Dream Daddy or Doki Doki Literature Club or things in that sort of vein, you would love this game. This game was before those ones, and it hits different, alright? This game is something that I'm genuinely passionate about, and I have been passionate about for years, but it is genuinely very hard to talk about it when most people just know it as the funny pigeon dating sim. I don't think this video is going to cause Hatoful Boyfriend to have a revival or anything like that, but anything I can do that can potentially get a new person to give this game a try, it's worth a shot. And honestly, please, if you're interested, just go and get the game. Please, it's very cheap on Steam, it's worth it. Whether you're going in for laughs or you're going in just to have a nice visual novel experience, you will enjoy this game, and I really hope that this may have brought it to a new audience, so I guess that's my job done for now. Have fun with the game, everybody! Thank you so much for sitting and listening to this video. This was honestly something I've been working on for a while, and I scrapped this video concept several times because I wanted to try and get it right, and I decided, fuck it, I'm just gonna commit and do the best I can. If you enjoyed this video, please make sure to like and subscribe. It really helps me, it helps my content. Please comment below what your thoughts are. If you've played the game before, if you're interested because of this video, you're interested for other reasons. If you're interested in my content, please go and check out some of my other social media. I am under Iridescent Aria on Twitter, Instagram, Twitch, TikTok, pretty much everywhere. In fact, I've been streaming on Twitch a lot lately. It's where I've mostly been, so if you're interested in watching me shittily attempt to play video games, you know, go give me a follow over there. It's really appreciated. I'm planning on doing some live recordings over there on some video topics that I'm not 100% sure on how to tackle by myself with some friends. So keep an eye out for that, I guess. I'm actually contemplating doing a playthrough of Hatoful Boyfriend over there myself, if anyone is interested in that. But, if I am gonna do that, I'm not exactly sure how I'm gonna tackle stuff, so we'll see. Yeah, thank you for listening to me talk about a bird game for however long this video ends up being. It's really appreciated, and, guess this is where I'm gonna leave, so see you later, everyone!